Hello everybody and welcome to Parks Bros, it's Drew here, and today we're heading back to SeaWorld San Antonio, and more specifically all of their roller coasters to rank, rate, and review them all. So over the past month or so, we've been reviewing all of the major roller coasters at SeaWorld San Antonio. So if you would like a full in-depth review of any of these rides, make sure to go look in the playlist and check out my entire thoughts on all of these coasters. But if you didn't know what ranked rated review is, it's realistically my series where I take all coasters into account at a certain park or a specific set of rides, whatever the case may be, and talk about each one individually in under 1 minute while ranking, rating, and reviewing them. But of course, if you would like a full review and rating, make sure to go check out those original reviews on the channel. But without further ado, let's rank, rate, and review the newest of the SeaWorld parks. Coming in at number 6 is, of course, the kiddie coaster at the park. This is Super Grover's Boxcar Derby, and while yes, I've been on it, I will not be rating a kiddie coaster. I feel like that's a little absurd, just because I am a full-grown adult, and these coasters aren't really made for me. But I will say, it offers a fun experience for the young ones especially, and would be a fantastic first ever coaster for whomever would like. Next up is number 5, which features Journey to Atlantis, the mock water coaster that only features one major drop. Sadly, I have not personally been able to ride this ride. It has evaded me every visit I have been, but I'm putting it at number 5 because in all reality, it doesn't feature anything outstanding. The whole ride is a chain lift, a turntable, a backwards mini drop, another turntable, and then of course, the major drop into a splashdown. Sure, this ride would be amazing on hot days, but whenever I've visited, being specifically in the later part of the year, this ride is either down for maintenance or it's under 50 degrees at the park. So while I technically can't rate this coaster, I would say it's either for beginner or intermediate riders, and honestly, in my rating scale, anywhere from a 4 to a 6. That takes us to number 4, to another coaster I've actually ridden, being Wave Breaker the Rescue Coaster. Now don't get me wrong, I actually really enjoy this ride, and I think it's a lot of fun for all ages, but it's just not as intense or fun as I would personally prefer. But going into more detail on the ride, this is a multi-launch coaster, so there's no giant lift hills to start the ride. You just get blasted out of the station, or more specifically pre-show, into some awesome twisting turns above the water. This ride, while absolutely incredible to take pictures of, it's just not exactly my perfect cup of tea. So with that, I will rate it for beginner riders and of course give it a 7 out of 10. But I will say, this is absolutely the perfect ride for all ages. That will move us to number 3, which is the Batman clone at the park, or should I say B&M inverted coaster, the Great White. Now this is the park's only inverting coaster, and it takes you upside down 5 separate times. So it's easily the most intense coaster at the entire park. But while it's super intense, this entire ride does feel quite short, and on certain days can be a little bit shaky. Now one thing that brings it back for me personally is the fact that there are so many of these rides all over the United States and all over the world, and not to forget, there's another one of these coasters exactly the same but mirrored just a couple of miles away at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. So that does hurt it just a little bit since you can get that experience at the rival park. Nonetheless though, this is an absolutely thrilling experience that you won't want to miss, especially since there's rarely ever a line for it. And I will say, it is still a heck of a lot of fun, even if you can ride it all over the world. So with that, I'm gonna give it a black diamond, or for experienced riders, and an 8 out of 10. This of course leads us to number 2, which will be the newest ride at SeaWorld San Antonio, Texas Stingray, the tallest, fastest, and longest wooden coaster in all of Texas. I'm sure this is the one opinion that's going to be a little more controversial, because I know plenty of people that would say this is their favorite ride in the park. For me personally, it did feel a little bit short and didn't offer enough variance in its entire layout to make it that, at least in my mind. But I will say, for sure, this is an absolutely incredible coaster that you need to check out, and is also the most re-rideable coaster at the park. But while it does offer a lot of airtime and speed, to me, it's just not as intense as I would personally prefer, especially for a wooden coaster with its 100-foot height. But I will say this is the perfect step up from something like Wavebreaker the Rescue Coaster. And of course, the perfect stepping stone from Wavebreaker to something like Great White in the park. So for that, I'm gonna give it a blue square, meaning you should be definitely an intermediate rider before taking on Texas Stingray. So ride something like Wavebreaker, of course Grover's, and Journey to Atlantis prior to taking on this beast. And out of 10, I gotta give it an 8. Well, that leads us to number 1, and there's only one choice left. That is Steel Eel, the Morgan Hypercoaster, which is the tallest, fastest coaster at SeaWorld San Antonio, and it offers quite the intense ride. Not as intense as Great White, but I will say it's still more intense than Texas Stingray. Its immense speed and height in comparison to the rest of the park's lineup really does put it literally above the rest for me. And also, its absurd amount of airtime and weightlessness that just vaults you out of your seat every couple of seconds makes this ride undeniable, and its way to make you almost feel like an astronaut. Now, don't get me wrong, this ride can be a little bumpy and rough to a lot of people, so it doesn't surprise me at all that Texas Stingray, or maybe even Wavebreaker the Rescue Coaster, might be put above this in a lot of people's rankings. But for me personally, that doesn't bother me too much because it adds a little bit of character and also makes those blissful moments of airtime a little more interesting. So I would definitely say be an experienced rider, so that means it's a black diamond, and out of 10, this is a 9, easily my favorite coaster at all of SeaWorld San Antonio. So there you have it, the entire park's coaster lineup ranked, rated, and reviewed. Let me know what your rankings are down in the comments below. I would love to hear what you guys think, whether you agree with me or completely disagree with me. Just remember, it's all an opinion, so my thoughts on these rides are not gospel. And of course, opinions can always change as well. But with that, that means we're gonna be moving on to the next park in this series, which is of course, I know you're super excited to get back there in the next 2 weeks, and if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe to stay tuned to see videos like this and more, reviewing more popular attractions at parks all around the United States and eventually the world. But thank you all so much for watching. It means the absolute world. And of course, if you haven't yet, make sure to go subscribe to my second channel run by my little brother Hunter, where him and I are getting up to some crazy antics in video games. But until next time, we'll see you on the next ride.